90% of people trying to learn guitar quit in the first year. And if you're trying to teach yourself, your chances of coming out of the winning side of that statistic after a whole year are even worse. But don't give up hope, because I've spent the last 7 years going from this to this, using nothing but completely free online resources as a self-taught guitarist. And in this video, I've put together the top 5 tips I wish I knew as a beginner guitarist to help you go from knowing nothing to becoming a successful self-taught guitarist, winning the 90% statistic and learning it in half the time it took me if you apply these tips. And make sure you stick around to the end, because tip number 5 is probably the most important advice you will ever get as a self-taught guitarist. Let's get into it. Tip number 1. YouTube and Songsterr is all you need. Musician, simply guitar, unnecessary. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use them, and if they work for you, then that's fantastic. But I find YouTube and Songsterr, which are both completely free, by the way, I'll explain what Songsterr is in just 1 second, to be a very comprehensive and synergetic teaching duo that taught me everything I know. Now, pay close attention, because I'm about to break down my exact process for learning new things on the guitar with these 2 applications I just mentioned. First, I search up a YouTube video of the song I want to learn. Note that this can also be a riff, scale, chord shape, whatever it may be. I'm just using song for simplicity, just to get a feel for the rhythm and melody. This is a crucial first step that will accelerate your learning drastically, because by listening to the song first and internalizing the melody and the notes, now your brain can associate certain notes with fingerings and frets on the guitar, something that it takes most guitarists decades to master. Okay, step 2. Search up a YouTube tutorial video of the song. Once again, it can mean scale, riff, chord, whatever you want to learn. And for most popular songs, there should be. Some of my favorite people to learn from include Gareth Evans, Paul Davids, and Marty Music. They're all linked down below in the description. If there isn't a tutorial video on YouTube, you're going to have to look up tabs. Now, if you don't know what tabs are, it's essentially like sheet music for guitar. And they're super, super valuable to self-taught guitarists, so put that on your things to learn. Do take note that this is a more advanced way to learn than tutorial videos. So it's generally a good idea to start out with tutorials, and preferably tutorials with tabs on the screen, like this one, before moving on to just tabs alone. I prefer to use a website called Songsterr for using tabs, just because they're pretty accurate. They have pretty much any song out there, and they also have this very useful playback feature where you can listen to what this song should sound like and then try to emulate that. This takes us to a very important point on tabs, though, that you should always, always, always cross-reference what you're learning on the tabs to what the actual performance video of someone playing it, even when using a playback feature like Songsterr's, because not only does it help your note recognition like we were talking about before, but also tabs are often wrong. And even if they are correct, they don't give you any information about the rhythm. So it's a crucial step that you cross-reference what you're learning on the tabs with the actual video. Personally, I'll often use a combination of tutorials, tabs, and just learning by ear, especially as you develop that note recognition. So just use anything you can get your hands on. Tip number 2, no gear, no problem. As a beginner guitarist, it's always tempting to just go buy a bunch of cool gear, right? I mean, you're gonna need an acoustic, an electric, then that means that you're gonna also need a guitar cable, guitar amp, picks, you're gonna need capos, tuners, right? This is literally all you need. No tuners, you can just use one of the hundreds of free guitar tuning apps out there. Personally, I use Guitar Tuna. No electric guitar, you can play pretty much all the same stuff on acoustic, at least until you've assured yourself that you're not gonna quit. And then you can go out and buy an electric guitar, because the last thing in the world that you wanna do is go buy an expensive guitar and then 2 weeks later decide that you don't wanna play guitar anymore. And no picks. I personally believe that every guitar should start off fingerstyle, where you pluck the strings with your fingers instead of with a pick, just because it develops your dexterity and strength in your right hand, your picking hand, so much faster than using a pick does. Even a capo is unnecessary, not only because you can play the same songs just down, on the neck, but also because you can actually make one using nothing but a couple rubber bands and a pencil. I will say that there is a case where, as you advance, some guitar gear can actually help your progress, but we'll get into that in tip number 5. Tip number 3, just play something. I want to start this off by saying that a lot of self-taught guitarists make the mistake of teaching themselves bad habits. So whenever you're watching an advanced guitarist perform or do a tutorial video, I want you to pay special attention to how they're holding their guitar, the shape their wrist is in, how they're holding the pick if they're using one. And it may seem kind of silly right now, but trust me, doing this simple step right now and getting good habits nailed down rather than bad ones is going to save you years of frustration and wasted time down the road. All that being said though, you just have to play something. Like when I'm a beginner, I find myself trying to make sure that I follow all the right steps and do everything in the right order so that everything's going to fall into place later down the road and I'm not doing anything the wrong way. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's no right thing to learn first or right way to start learning the guitar. The most valuable thing that you can be doing with your time right now is just having a guitar in your hands. For instance, this was the first riff that I learned, but I could have just as easily learned something like this, or maybe like this. It's not really as important what you learn, it's just that you're learning something and then you have the guitar in your hands. So remember to pay attention to good technique, but don't let that stop you from logging as many hours as possible with the strings underneath your fingers. Hey guys, future me here. If you're enjoying the video so far and you think it might be beneficial for others to see these tips, then it really helps the video and the channel as a whole get out to more people if you just hit like and subscribed. I really appreciate it. Now let's get back to the video. Tip number 4, schedule and goals over the hump. If your guitar journey is anything like mine, it'll probably end up looking a little like this. You start here at skill level 0 and 0 years spent practicing. Then, as you start investing the first hours into practicing, you'll see visible progress. You'll start learning chords and new songs, even if they're very basic, and it's fun to practice and create sound. But here comes the beginner's worst nightmare, the hump. This is where practicing is going to feel like a chore. You'll struggle to up your caliber of songs, your fingers will blister in pain, and it'll feel like guitar just isn't meant for you. This is probably where most of that 90% quit, but that's because they're not sticking to a schedule and setting smart goals. Now, when I say schedule, this can mean anything from 3 hours a day to a half hour a week. It's all up to you and what your goals are as a guitar player. But the important thing is that you set a date and you don't miss it. If you slip, then it becomes easier and easier to do that again. So if you're going to set a schedule for 1 week, make sure it's something that you can stick to. Now, on top of creating a schedule, you'll need SMART goals. This means goals that are specific. For instance, learning a certain song or scale. Measurable. Don't set a goal like, I want to play better. They're attainable. Be realistic in what you can accomplish and don't push yourself too hard. I mean, excellence does take time. They're relevant. Set goals that are in line with the specific style you want to master. Are you a hybrid picker or a fingerstyle guitarist, a rock star or a jazz guy? And they're time bound. Set a deadline for yourself to learn a specific song or scale or whatever it may be. Once again, don't go too intense because that'll lead to burnout, especially during the hump phase. And stick with it. That's it. With scheduling and goal setting, you'll be able to get past any hump, and once you're back into that upward sloping portion of the graph, which you'll know because practicing will start to feel fun again, then now you can kind of adjust how you set goals and schedules thereon based on, becoming more lax when it feels burdensome and adding it back on when you have the drive to do so because of tip number 5, which is make it fun. This is by far the most important tip of the video, so if you only remember one thing from the 5 tips that I gave you, this is the thing to remember. Because if you make guitar playing fun, then you're going to want to play. And if you want to play, you're going to play more and you're going to get better faster. And most importantly, you're not going to quit. Now, I know this sounds kind of obvious, but I think this is the biggest reason why that 90% of people quit. Well, how do you keep guitar playing fun, you ask? Well, first off, prioritize learning songs and riffs that you like to learn rather than just grinding scales all day or, learning music theory, unless of course that's fun for you. Secondly, and I know this one sounds simple, but keep your guitar visible around the house. This might mean that you have to go buy a stand for it, but trust me, it is the best adjustment you'll ever make because just having it visible where you can easily go grab it when you have the temptation to do so is going to lead to so many more hours practicing on the guitar and so many hours getting better and having fun. And lastly, don't be too hard on yourself when it comes to meeting schedules and goals because you want to think about the long term rather than the short term. Avoid burnout and become one of that 10% that moves on past the first year. Kind of going back to what I was saying at the end of tip number 4, you want to kind of play to the curve of your guitar journey. So in those times where it's a hump and you need that extra structure to keep you playing and keep you motivated, that's when you should be hard on your goal setting, your scheduling. But then when it starts to become more fun again and you kind of that upward sloping portion of the graph, now you should kind of, lean back and pull off a little where you're still maximizing your productivity as a learner, but you're not limiting the amount of fun that you're having on the instrument. One last thought on making guitar playing more fun. This goes back to gear. You know how I said how there is a case where as you advance, some guitar gear can actually help your progress. Well, this bad boy is probably one of the best investments I've ever made. It's just a looper pedal, which kind of allows you to jam with yourself. it opens up so many possibilities on the instrument and just makes it so much fun to play again. So when the time comes as you advance, I definitely recommend investing in one of those. Anyways, that's all, folks. So thank you so much for watching all the way till the end, and I wish you the best of luck in your self-taught guitar journey as you continue on.